Welcome to our next week in Science for Healthcare Workers, week 4. And we're looking at the requirements of human life and the term of homeostasis. So let's go there. These are my 3 warm-up questions for us to discuss in small groups. So I'm going to put us in 2 different rooms. And here's the questions. 1, what are the requirements of human life? What are all of the things that we need for human life? And 2, as medical providers, what do you measure, right? When patients come into the office, what are you measuring to check all of these check boxes for this is a healthy person? They have all of the requirements for life. What are we actually checking? Specifically looking at that idea of vital signs, right? What are those signs of life? And then 3, what makes a healthy life? So as a group, let's look at some of these questions. First one, what are the requirements of human life? What were some of the things we talked about?
Clean water.
Okay,
and
yep.
Food.
Access to clean drinking water, food.
Good people to interact with.
Yes, environment, good people to interact with. And that's something that's becoming really popular too, this idea of like mental health and social health. And we're very aware of it right now over the past year of the levels of isolation that people have been going through, right? With all the social distancing, and how is that affecting not just our physical health, but also our mental health? Absolutely. Anything else? Number 2, as medical providers, what do we measure when we check for a healthy life? What are the vital signs that we check for?
Oxygen.
Oxygen levels.
Pulse. Heartbeat. Yeah.
Blood pressure, height, and weight.
Yep, blood pressure, height, weight. Anything else? There's a big one I haven't heard yet. And it's really popular because of the coronavirus too. Everyone's always checking this.
Temperature.
Your temperature, very good. Yep.
Yeah.
Temperatures, yep, for signs of infection. If you have a higher temperature, absolutely. And what makes a healthy life? Was there anything that we haven't mentioned that makes a healthy life? What do we need for a healthy life?
Eating healthy food.
Healthy food.
Exercise and like emotional stability and like
Absolutely.
healthy relationships.
Yep. Absolutely. So we're going to dive into all of those things today, all of those categories of what do we need as human beings for a healthy life. So let's take a better look. First, there is a scientific term that I wanted to cover for our biology unit called homeostasis. And when I look at this word, I break it up and we have homeo, which means like or similar, and stasis means level. And so we're keeping everything at the same level. And that's what homeostasis is. It's this like balancing act, right? That we're trying to constantly keep the body at a stable level. And we look at temperature, we look at bodily fluids like our heart rate, our blood pressure, and we're constantly trying to keep ourselves at balance. And that is a process that our body is constantly going through to have this healthy life. And we're going to look at all these different aspects. Here's a video that describes that process of homeostasis a little bit deeper. Let's watch this video.
So what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is a term first defined by Claude Bernard in 1865. It means maintaining a constant internal environment. Wow, great. That really explains it, doesn't it? Let me try and make it a bit clearer then. Imagine the cockpit of a plane. It is packed full of dials and it is the pilot's job to make sure they all stay in the right place. If any of them change, he will correct the plane to keep them in the right place and the plane in the air. This is a bit like how our brain works. Sensors all around the body are measuring various things and sending the information back to the brain. The brain then does its best to keep all these things stable and constant to keep the body working properly. This is homeostasis, maintaining a constant internal environment. So what kind of things need to be kept constant in the body? Well, it's very important to keep our temperature the same at around 37 degrees Celsius. You can find out more about this in the video on temperature regulation. You also need to keep the levels of sugar in the blood constant along with levels of ions and water. Your blood pressure needs to be carefully monitored along with the amounts of waste in the blood, such as carbon dioxide and urea. Okay, so let's say one of these factors goes too high or low. What is the brain going to do to get it back to the normal levels? The answer to that is negative feedback. Negative feedback is the process where the brain uses either a hormone or a nervous system to send a signal to the part of the body that can rectify the problem. For example, after you eat a meal, your blood sugar level increases. You can see it on this graph. This is detected and the pancreas will release a hormone called insulin that causes the sugar to be stored in the liver. Therefore, as you can see on the graph, the blood sugar level returns to normal. Negative feedback is the loop from which the body detects a stimulus, reacts by responding accordingly, and brings the body back to the normal levels. So why is homeostasis so important? Our metabolism, which is all the chemical reactions in our bodies that keep us alive, is controlled by enzymes. These enzymes only work in very specific conditions. If these conditions change, they could stop working and we could die. Luckily, all this happens without you having to think about it. If you had to do it yourself, you would spend all day and night just trying to keep all these things constant and would have no time to do anything fun like watch videos of cats on the internet.
All right, so that's the scientific definition, right, of all of these things working together to keep our body functioning and looking at all of those levels of oxygen, our blood sugar level, all of that going on in our body and keeping this balanced state. And so we're going to look at those a little bit deeper. As medical providers, these are what we're checking for when someone comes in, when we check those vital signs. We first do temperature. What is the average temperature someone should have in Fahrenheit?
Is it like 95 or 6? A little bit higher, I think.
A little bit higher than, yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit higher than that. It's about 98.7, right? 98.7 is that average temperature that we want it to be under 99, but definitely above 95, 96. So kind of in that range. And it does depend on age, right? And so there is age that we look at, but it's still kind of, you know, in that high 90s area for all humans. There are two different, there's different ways that we can check temperature, especially with infants and toddlers. They really look at that too, to make sure that they have this balanced temperature throughout their entire body, but there are different ways to do that. Why do we check for temperature? Why is that important?
It's a sign of like infection or like sickness.
Yeah,
it's one of,
absolutely, Libby. Yeah, this is kind of one of our first keys that there's a problem, right? That if there is a fever, if we have this high temperature, we know there's some type of a problem. We also have issues here in Alaska with someone being below temperature, where their body temperature gets too cold because of the elements in the winter. What is that condition called when our body temperature gets too low?
Hypothermia.
Hypothermia, very good. We have hypo meaning below, thermal meaning temperature or heat, so it's below heat. And so hypothermia is an issue too. So when we get patients coming in, especially in ERs, that if they were in some type of an accident or an emergency or a boating accident, they're taking that temperature to say, hey, what's the temperature of the body and what do we need to do? So several reasons. The other one is heart rate, our pulse. What is the average pulse that we should have? That's kind of a trick question. What do you think? What is the average pulse we should have? And why is that a trick question? Why I say that?
I think I think it's depend. Usually on us it's depend, but usually it's like below, not above 50. I can't remember. Yeah, like something between 40 to 50, something like that.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay, Maurice. Any other ideas? I agree with what you're talking about a little bit, Maurice. Any others? What's the average pulse? And why did I say that's kind of a trick question?
It depends on your age, your health.
With heart rate, the biggest factor that changes heart rate actually has nothing to do with like age. It actually has to do with your activity. What are you doing? As humans, if we start exercising, our heart rate increases because it's working harder to get that blood through our system, to get the nutrients and oxygen through our body. So we have an active heart rate. If we start running on a treadmill, our heart will get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And then if we stop moving, we reach what's called our resting heart rate. And that's what we're trying to measure. So as medical providers, we're trying to measure that resting heart rate. What is a person's heart rate when they're not experiencing pain, when they're not experiencing high levels of stress and anxiety, and that they're not exercising or working really hard? We know that if someone is in extreme pain, that heart rate increases. We know if someone's just ran a marathon, their heart rate is increased. So we're looking at that resting heart rate. And so that's where, like I said, this is kind of a trick question. We need to make sure that if the person's been sitting down for like 2 or 3 minutes, that they're in this like nice relaxed state, we can check their heart rate and see, okay, what is their resting heart rate? And the average resting heart rate is around 70 beats per minute. Is what we're looking at. And if it gets lower, that means the person has a very functioning heart and circulatory system because their body needs less of it going through it, right? They're a very, very healthy person. So the lower the heart rate, the healthier they are when they're resting. The higher the heart rate, the harder the heart is working and harder the body is working to get the nutrients and blood through the system. So our average resting heart rate is about 70. Now, I'm assuming most of you are all sitting at home and we've all been kind of just kind of relaxing. None of us has like done any like major exercise or anything in the last few minutes. And so we're going to look at checking our heart rate and how we do that. One of the skills that you need for the CNA is reading an analog clock, and we'll actually look at that at the end of the semester where we'll look at those specific skills, but we're going to practice one today. And one thing we need to know is the second hand. And all of the clocks that you will see in the hospitals and doctor offices and clinics always have a second hand because this is what we use to check a person's heart rate. That we set second hand go over for every second, because we're trying to figure out how many beats does the heart beat in 1 minute. So how do we do that? Looking at one of these clocks. Does anyone know the trick that medical providers do?
Yeah.
What do we do, Maurice?
You count it on 15 seconds, like it's 15, like, is it right? 15, yeah,
Yep.
15 seconds
Yep.
or 30 seconds. Yeah.
Or 30.
It's supposed to be multiplied by 2, so
Okay, and then you can
my
multiply
son
by.
is really so loud,
Yep.
so I need to mute myself again.
That's okay. That's okay, Maurice. Thank you. Or we can multiply by 4. Exactly. So instead of waiting and watching that second hand go all the way around for 1 minute, most nurses, CNAs, medical providers, when they're working with a patient, they look at the clock and they actually just count 15 seconds. So they watch that second hand and they count for a total of 15 seconds. And then once they've reached 15, in their head, they multiply it by 4, and that gives them the heart rate per minute. And so this is one of the math skills that we need to be able to do, to either multiply by 4 or multiply by 2. We're going to practice both of them. So I have a clock here. Let me pull this up. So there's my second hand going around, and I'm going to do 15 seconds. So I'm going to wait for it to go from either like the 12 to the 3 or 12 to the 6 to do either 15 or 30 seconds. We're going to do 15 first. But first I need to find my pulse. Where is it? And I'm going to do what's called I'm going to look for my radial pulse because that's what's going along my radial nerve and my radius bone. And so you look with your thumb, you come down to your wrist and there's kind of like a bump at your wrist there, you're going to come down inward and put fingers on both sides of that wrist. And putting it there, you should feel that pulse. Do you ladies all feel that? Go ahead and try it on yourself. Do you feel that? Can you find that radial pulse? Good. Thumbs up.
Sure do. I'm alive.
Perfect. We all got it there? All right. So let's go ahead and test this. So I found my pulse here. So I'm going, let's start with Christina. Go ahead and tell me when to start and when to stop counting. And I'm going to try to count. I want 15 seconds. All right, I'm ready whenever you are. Tell me whenever to stop and whenever to tell me when to stop and start.
Stop and start, not. Oh, okay.
Yeah, to go ahead and tell me to start for 15 seconds.
Okay. Start. Stop.
Very good. So I counted 14. So I had 14 in that 15 seconds. So now I need to take that and multiply it by 4. What is 14 times 4?
$56.
56? I don't know if I agree with that. Did you say 56 or 66? I got 66 because I have 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 6. So I got 66. So looking at our chart, 66, that is a healthy, that is in that above average healthy resting heart rate, what we should be at. All right, so now ladies, go ahead and you try. I'm going to tell you when to start and stop, and go ahead and count. I'm going to start it when it gets down here at the 6. Go ahead and find your pulse. Ready, and begin. And stop. All right, what did we get?
I had 21.
So 21.
I got 11.
11.
I had 18.
18.
98.
Oh, come on.
I got 18.
18 as well.
20.
20. All right, so let's take these and multiply them by 4. So what is 21 times 4? What do we got? How do we do that? 21 times 4.
84. 84.
Yep, 84. Exactly. So the way I did that, I have 21 and I have 4. I'm actually just going to do the 1 first. So 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So I have 84. All right, what about 11? What's 11 times 4?
44.
44. This is like professional athlete. Who was that? Was that you, Maurice?
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm just.
Maurice is a professional athlete. I think this one we need to test again personally. All right, 18. So if we take 18 and multiply by 4. No, you're good, Maurice. Don't worry about it. Okay. Yes. Yep, 72. All right, 18 times 4.
80.
So we got this. Yep, and then 20 times 4 is 80. Very good. So we can see that range, right? So 84, 72, 80, and we're looking at that range. That's where we want to be. That 80 is up here, a little high. Even 75 is a little high too, depending on age. We want to be kind of right around in here. And so the longer you go, the more accurate it'll often be. So if you go 30 seconds instead of 15 seconds, you'll get often a more accurate level, but that's how medical providers do it, using that second hand. All right. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's a difference between the, I think it's apical, the apical pulse or the radial pulse. We were checking the radial pulse because it is along our radial nerve that comes all the way down right here above our radius bone. I think rad, that's really rad with the thumbs up. So that's the radius going all the way up. That's the radial pulse. The apical pulse is actually there at our heart itself. And they want to make sure in hospitals when they take your pulse, they often do both, because they want to make sure that that actual pulse coming from your heart is maintaining through your entire body. That if you take the pulse here, it should match up with the pulse at your heart. And that if it doesn't, there is some type of an issue that's going on. And that's what this is explaining here, that the apical pulse should always be compared to the radial pulse. If the radial pulse is less, there is some type of an issue or a problem. So they do both of those. And so as CNAs, they often expect CNAs and things to do this type, and then the actual, what is their positions? Like the cardiologist will actually use an EKG machine. That's also why EKGs have so many points, right? That EKG has all those different points of contact, because it's really measuring all those different outputs to see, is that heart rate and pressure and everything staying the same throughout the entire system, or is one part of the system kind of falling apart? All right, another thing we look for are oxygen levels. We had talked about too, that we put the little clip on our fingers and check the level of oxygen in our blood system. Why is this important?
Because too much oxygen is not good,
Yeah.
or
Mm-hmm.
too low,
Yep.
too
Too much
low
is.
oxygen and too much, yeah, not so good.
And what they're really looking for in hospitals is more the too less of oxygen. This was something that we saw over the last few months with the coronavirus, and how overwhelmed the healthcare system was, that a lot of people, they were telling to stay home. They said, all right, you tested positive for COVID, stay home, monitor your symptoms, and if it gets worse, then come to the hospital. And one of the things they told people to monitor was the oxygen level, because since the coronavirus was respiratory and so many people were having respiratory issues, it would decrease the oxygen level in their blood. That if they were coughing and couldn't get oxygen into their blood system because of the respiratory issues, that was one thing that was, if it got below 90, it was come to the ER immediately, because we need to put you on a ventilator. We need to get more oxygen into your system. And this was one of the largest problems that they were looking for, telling people to monitor not just their temperature, but their oxygen level at home. And then we have blood pressure. Tell me about blood pressure. Why is that important? And what are we actually measuring? And what is a good blood pressure?
The normal one is 120 something, yeah, 120 over 90, over 80 right there.
That is our average blood pressure. And we know that's normal. And these are numbers we need to know. 120 over 80. 120 over 80, that's a normal blood pressure. And as those numbers go up higher, that's a bad sign. And as those numbers go lower, that's also a bad sign as well too. The average is 120 over 80, but what do those mean? What is the 120 and what is the 80? Do we know? And if not,
so this one is, we usually systolic, yeah.
Yep.
Systolic and diastolic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are our two terms. So
The
systolic,
is the first number and the diastolic is the second number.
correct. Yep. Systolic is our first. Diastolic is the second. Systolic is the pressure when the heart is actually squeezing, right? So the boom, that squeeze, that initial pressure, and that's why it's that higher number too. That is where the pressure should be the highest when that heart is squeezing, and that's the systolic pressure. Then the heart relaxes. Now what is the pressure? And that's what we're measuring. We're measuring what is the pressure when the heart is squeezing and what is the pressure between those beats when the heart is relaxed. Ba-boom, ba-boom. What is that second number? So this is when that heart is squeezing, when the heart is resting. And we look at those two numbers, and those two numbers then determine if someone has hypertension, hyper meaning above, tension, pressure. So they have too high of blood pressure, or the opposite. Does anyone know what the opposite is of hypertension? If someone's blood pressure is too low? We have a root word. We talked about temperature, and we said if someone was below temperature, they were hypothermic. So what would below blood pressure be called?
Hypotension.
Hypotension. Yes, we have hypertension. Hyper means above. With that ER, hyper is above. Hypo means below. So hypertension is high blood pressure. Hypotension is low blood pressure. And we're looking at measuring those. So how do we actually do that? Most medical professionals, we have these automated machines, right? You see them in like all the doctor's offices and all the hospitals that they actually put on the blood pressure cuff and they hit it and the machine does it itself. There is a manual way of taking blood pressure with this. I'm not even going to try to say this word. What is it? Sphygmometer? There's a video.
Mommanometer.
Yes. Oh, very good. I'm not even going to try. But blood pressure cuff, right? That's the word we all use, right? No one in the medical field really calls it this. They just say, oh, grab the blood pressure cuff.
Blood cuff, yeah. Blood cuff.
Yep, the blood cuff. Yep. And we also need a stethoscope to actually listen to. And so here's a video of how to actually do it with the blood pressure cuff and a stethoscope.
Manual blood pressure cuff with a stethoscope by Paramed. A Mommanometer can be used both in a
Mommanometer.
doctor's office and at home to measure blood pressure. The Paramed cuff is very comfortable and simple to use. A stethoscope, which immediately simplifies the use of this device, is included. How to prepare the device. A Mommanometer is composed of a cuff with tubes, an air pump, a manometer, a regulation key, and a storage case. The device must be assembled prior to use. Attach the manometer to the cuff using the tubes. We also recommend inserting the cuff's edge into a special D-ring. Do not touch it after completing this step. Place the cuff in front of you so that the ring is in front. Insert the cuff's edge so that it's inside the ring. The special seal on the edge will prevent the cuff from falling out of the ring. How to put the cuff on correctly. You can put the cuff on your arm yourself or with someone's help. We recommend putting it on your left arm 2 to 3 centimeters, 1 inch, above your elbow. Pay attention to where the cuff's tubes are. They should run along the center of your arm. Look for the word artery on the cuff for orientation. Wrap the cuff around your arm so that you can fit one finger between the cuff and your arm and attach it with Velcro. The manometer has a special fastening tool so that you can attach it in a place that's comfortable for you. For example, if you're measuring someone else's blood pressure, it's convenient for the readout to be at eye level so that you can carefully monitor the pressure gauge. If you're measuring your own blood pressure, you can similarly use this fastening tool to place the manometer so that it's comfortable for you. How to use a Mommanometer correctly. Put the stethoscope on and place the head on your humeral artery, a bit above the elbow joint, facing the body where the artery usually runs. You can secure the stethoscope using the cuff. Quickly fill the cuff with air until it reaches your typical upper pressure reading with an additional 30 mmHg. Then stop pumping in air. Start letting air out of the cuff so that the manometer's arrow descends 2 to 3 marks per second. At the same time, listen to your heartbeat using the stethoscope. When your heart beats, the arrow usually makes a short, abrupt jump. Note the pressure when you first hear your heartbeat. This is the upper or systolic pressure number. Note the pressure when the sound stops. This is the lower or diastolic pressure number. Then release the rest of the air from the cuff. After
All right,
using
that's
the
what we're looking
device,
for. We're listening for that heart rate to see the moment we hear it, that's going to be our first number. That's that highest pressure. And then the last time we hear it is then that lower, the diastolic, in the two sides. So 120 over 80. That's the number we have memorized in our head of a healthy blood pressure. All right, the other thing we look at is weight. This is another one of our CNA skills that you need to have, is using an analog scale. Have you ladies used one of these scales before? Have you seen it before? Do you know what to do?
As a patient, yes.
Yes.
Okay, as a patient, yeah, as a patient, you're like, you just step on it. I don't need to do anything. But if you were trying to measure someone's weight, what are these things?
Okay. Yeah, you need to make this this arrow thing on here. Like it's balanced between the top one and the low one. Like it should be in the middle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so, yeah, with this end here, if there's too much, if the person's really heavy, right, it's going to go straight up. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to balance it to figure out, all right, what weight are they at? So by adding weight, by moving these to the right, we're adding more and more weight for it to reach. If it now hits the bottom, we know we've added too much weight. So we need to go back to figure out, all right, how much weight do they weigh? And so we start with the big one, and we can start at either 0, 50, 100, or 150. And so if we're working with an adult like me, I know I'm way over 150. And so we're going to start at 150. Then we take our little one and we start moving it up one at a time. So then we have 151, 152. We can go up 10, which then would be 160. We can go up to 170, 180. And then if we max out at 200 and it still hasn't gone down, we know the person weighs more than 200 pounds. So then we have to take this and switch it over to 200. And then we start going up again, 201, 202, 210, 215. And the moment we reach their weight, this arrow will drop and will become balanced. Does that make sense? Was that clear? I know it was kind of hard to see with the picture. You can't actually see it physically move. When we get to the skills section, we will actually work with this physically and try to do some models. But does that kind of make sense? Kind of? Yeah?
Yes.
No?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so we're moving these weights, adding it there, trying to balance the scale. Because what we're doing is we're matching, right? We're taking, all right, I'm adding weight to match it to that person's weight. And that's why it's balanced. I'm trying to figure out, all right, how much does this person weigh? Well, I'm going to add weight to then get to that number. And so you start with the big one and kind of estimate, where are they? Are they less than 200 pounds? If they're less than 200 pounds, you kind of want to start here at 150 or 100. If they're more than 150, you definitely want to start at 150 and go up there. If they're more than 250 pounds, you can start right here and then add on. So 250, and then you can add 10, 260, 270, 280, and then see where they're at. All right, so weight is also important. Why is it important to look at people's weight and to evaluate their weight? What does that tell us?
Overweight, just enough, the right way.
Yep, overweight.
malnutrition. What do you call that? Like
Yeah, malnutrition.
yeah, malnutrition, something like that.
Yep. Are they getting the nutrients that they need? Is there evidence of an eating disorder? Right? Especially because we take patients' weights at the beginning of all of their meetings. And then if we see, wow, over 4 months, this person has decreased like 60 pounds, like what happened? What caused this drastic loss in weight? Was it healthy dieting and exercise? Was it bulimia? Was it anorexia? Like what's going on? And this can be kind of a warning sign of maybe it was a side effect of medication. Weight gain can often be a side effect of medication too. And so again, we're measuring that to see kind of what's going on with the body. Is it maintaining that homeostasis, right? Is it maintaining that balance where we're supposed to be? And we looked at this last time, the different charts of height and weight, and that's why we take a person's height, because it is matched from how tall they are for how much they should weigh based on their height. BMI is another word, their body mass index. That is another way that we can measure a person's weight too, is looking at their body mass index, is how much of their body mass should they weigh based on different factors, and it's more than just their height. And then the CNA terms to know, we have overweight, we have obese, and we have very obese. And the medical term that you will see in the CNA textbook is called morbidly obese. We have obese and morbidly obese. And like I said last time, we know that weight is directly correlated with health conditions and health, onset of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and these are kind of early warning signs of what health conditions could develop. So our CNA vocabulary, these are vocabulary words that you'll see in the CNA test and the CNA program. We have blood pressure and the abbreviation of BP for blood pressure. We have these two terms here, bradycardia and tachycardia. Tachycardia, what do these terms mean? Do we know? Have we seen them before? Have we seen them? If we cut them in half, I see the root word cardia, which tells us heart. Anything with the heart is always related to cardia, the cardiovascular or cardiologist. Cardio is heart. So we're measuring something with the heart. What could these be? Bradycardia or tachycardia? Do we know? We're talking about heart rate and the speed. Brady means slow and tachy means fast. So if someone has a really fast heart rate, they have a tachycardia. I think that's right. I'm now double guessing myself. I feel like, yeah. And so a tachycardia is over 100 beats per minute, right? So that's pretty fast. It has to be over 100 beats per minute. Something is going on that is causing this elevated heart rate. And then a bradycardia is then the opposite. Febrile is the scientific word for fever. And it's just the science word that you will see for fever. We looked at both of these here. What does hyper mean? If we see hyper in a word? What does
high?
High, yep, exactly. So hyper is high, hypo,
Low.
Low or below. So hypothermic, below temperature. Hypotension, below pressure. So their blood pressure is below the levels it should be. Hypertension, they are above them. We also see words like hypoglucosic, where glucose is sugar. So hypoglucose, their blood sugar level is too low. So we can start breaking those words apart and say, okay, if I see the word hypo, it means low. Pulse deficit, that is where we were looking at when we looked at like the actual pulse and rate of our heart based on where we're doing it at the radial site and the differences between those. That if there is a difference, there is a pulse deficit, meaning there is some issue with the circulatory system, that there's either a block or that there's something happening causing this deficiency between what we see with the heart and what we see from the radial pulse in the wrist. So these are all of our vital signs terminology. Any words, any of these not clear, or we don't understand, or we're ready to move on?
Ready to move
Ready?
on?
All right. So when we look at health and overall health, we've kind of just been focusing on this area here, right? The actual like physical health of the body. But a healthy person and a healthy lifestyle is so much more than just those scientific measurements, right? And this is what you guys had talked about at the beginning of class, that idea of socialization and hanging around other people, exercising regularly, strength training, hydration and drinking water, all of those, the nutrients that we're eating, our vitamins and minerals, our mental health. And so we're going to look at now other aspects of what are the things that we need. So first, starting with nutrition, you guys might have seen the food pyramid. I know when I was younger and went through elementary school and high school, I was always taught the image of the food pyramid. Have we seen this before?
Mm-hmm.
You guys know the symbol or the image that we use nowadays in 2021? Have you guys seen it? They've changed the pyramid. They changed it on us. Did you know they changed the pyramid? It's no longer a pyramid. It is a plate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
it's a plate.
it is the plate now. And so this is the image that we're teaching children, that we're teaching people. This is how they make it a little more realistic, more that visual image of when you're eating, right? That we need to be eating more vegetables, right? That our biggest part of our diet should be coming from vegetables. Then we have grains, healthy proteins, and fruits. What's not on the plate?
Facts?
Okay. Yep. I'm going to see a little here. Yeah, here. Oh, yeah, desserts. Okay. There's a big one, right? Don't even see it. Dairy. Where did dairy go? Right?
Dairy bad?
Where's the cheese? Where's the milk? Where's the things like that, right? And I wouldn't necessarily say dairy's bad now. I mean, we do see here, it's in the proteins, right? So we see like cheese as part of the protein category there. But there isn't necessarily this emphasis on dairy itself. And some people are arguing, is that really a health, or is that more political? Is it about like the government and funding the dairy industry? Because this is a really big debatable topic. Nutrition and healthy eating is very debatable. We all have different opinions. We all have different viewpoints on what's healthy and what's not healthy scientifically when it comes to food and nutrition, but there's a lot of money involved. Right? The government provides lots of subsidies to different industries for producing agriculture, for producing beef, for getting those meats. And the dairy industry is one of the big ones too. And we see it. We see like the Got Milk commercials that were sent to all of the schools, really like teaching kids like, oh, milk is so important. You have to drink this milk. You're getting calcium from the milk. But now we take a step back. Are we really getting that much calcium from milk? Are there other sources of healthier calcium? Like, are there better ways that you can get calcium than just drinking milk? Those are questions that nutritionists are kind of asking today. And they're really reevaluating the way we looked at nutrition 10, 20 years ago. And so this is kind of the image that they're using today, is the healthy plate model. One of our activities for homework this week is a website. It is, pull it up here. It is from the USDA, the Department of Agriculture. And there is a quiz, which is what's on your plate healthy quiz. And it's like 15, 20 questions, and it asks you all these different questions. You can go through it, and then it kind of customizes it specifically for you, and then looks at ways that you can improve your diet. Like they might say, ooh, you should vary your types of protein, or you should decrease the amount of fruit that you're eating, or you should increase the amount of fruit that you're eating. And so one of the activities, it's optional. If you want to, you can take there's 2 quizzes that you have to choose between one of the 2. You can take this quiz and look at what's on your plate and just kind of see what are some of the things that they suggest that you should change or keep doing with your diet. And so that's one of those there. And that's from the Department of Agriculture. All right, so moving on. There is an article that I have posted on Homework for us to read too, which was a fascinating article called Warning, Junk Foods Can Harm a Teen's Brain. And what scientists did is they took lab rats and they took one group of them and fed them a healthy diet. Then they took another one and fed them a diet that was mainly based on fats and sugars, and really increased the fats and sugars that are similar to the levels of junk food that teenagers are eating. And they wanted to see what effect does that have specifically on memory and on those cognitive processes of the brain. And they found some really interesting results. I will let you read the article, and that's one of the homework assignments that you can do, is to see what part of the brain is this unhealthy food affecting, and what chemical are these unhealthy foods high in fat and high in sugar producing in the brain, and how is that affecting things such as short-term memory and learning. And it's really fascinating, the research that they found. But this is I'm making it sound super scientific. It's really not that scientific. The science is there. The article itself is a really quick, easy read. It's only like 2 pages. Highly recommend reading it. But yeah, and then the other thing we look at are calories, right? That we have those nutritional facts on all of our products that we eat that say all the different things in them: cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, and we look at all of those and looking at calories. And we have a scale for calories. We know that based on a person's weight, to maintain that weight, this is kind of the range of calories they should be eating based on how active they are. If they are not very active, they have that lower number. The more active they are, the higher number. And they need to stay in this range to keep that body weight. So this is a scale, a chart that we often use working with patients and clients. And then, of course, we also have vitamins and minerals. This is the second quiz that is optional online for you to take. There's a quiz that is, so there's 2. There's the My Plate or the minerals. You have to choose one of them. There is a quiz that's like 15 questions over vitamins and minerals, and to take it just to see kind of what information surprises you. And I'll let you discover that on your own. Another thing we look at is water, hydration. Right? That was one thing that we had mentioned at the beginning of class, that we're drinking enough water. And this is something that they say a lot of people do not drink the recommended amount of water a day. What do you think, ladies? So they're saying you should get over 2.5 liters or 11.5 cups. Now remember, this is like baking cups, right? Or fluid ounces, right? It's not like a glass. A glass is bigger than a cup. Are you getting that much water in a day?
I'm definitely not getting that much water. Maybe half, if I'm lucky.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yeah. And that's
if I do because I usually do fasting, like 20-hour fasting, and then 4 hours eating. Yeah, I drink water a lot. In 20 hours, I drink more water than anything.
Okay. Absolutely. And so that's something about health too, those water levels, that we're staying hydrated. Sleep. I don't know if did anyone mention sleep at the beginning of class? I don't remember if I heard anyone mention sleep. It's so vital, right? And we're seeing that so many adults are not getting the recommended amount of sleep, that they're saying that adults should get 7 to 9 hours, and that young adults, those teenagers, right, that are 14, 15, 16, 17, that their brain is using all of this energy developing parts of their brain as young adults, really need that 9+ hours of sleep every day. And they are the ones getting less and less sleep of 4, 5, 6 hours a night. And so again, a healthy life really is getting the amount of sleep that we need to to heal our body and to recover it, to go back to homeostasis. We're seeing a lot of these sleeping disorders. The big ones that we talk about a lot, insomnia. Do we know what insomnia is? What is that?
Lack of sleep.
Yep, you can't sleep, right? It's literally like I'm laying there in bed, I want to sleep, but I'm just awake, and I'm awake all the time, and I can't get to sleep. That is a common disorder that is really common nowadays with people. It is a side effect of some medication, but it's also a side effect of stress and anxiety. That really stressful anxiety. If people have a lot of stress or anxiety in their life, they often develop insomnia. It's one of the side effects of stress and anxiety, that it keeps them up. It's like, I'm like need to keep going. I'm so worried and anxious about everything going on that I can't relax enough to actually get to sleep. All right. And exercise, we talked about too. How much should we exercise? This is also one of those things that's kind of changing, kind of like the food pyramid thing too, right? It seems like every so often it's like, oh, you should do this. Oh, no, you should do this. You should focus on this. And it's like constantly always changing, right? That's how I feel. But how much do doctors say we should exercise?
Something I heard recently was 30 minutes of moderate exercise 3 times a week.
Okay. And I think they're actually saying a little more than that now. What I think the new numbers is that 30 minutes 5 days a week for moderate exercise. Now we need that 30 minutes 5 days a week to get up to 150 minutes a week of that moderate. And again, that is that idea of like moderate, right? That we're really increasing that heart rate, right? We have to get that heart rate up and keep at healthy heart by increasing that heart rate. Just going for, a walk around the block, is that moderate? Is it not? Well, it depends on your age. It depends on, is that heart rate actually getting increased? So again, like I said, we're looking at all of these different aspects that go into a healthy lifestyle, all of the things that we need. For CNA vocabulary, here's all of our nutritional vocabulary words that we have. We looked at obesity, and then morbid obesity is the step above it. So we have obesity and then morbid obesity. Our eating disorder of anorexia. What is anorexia?
Not eating.
Yes, not eating. Calorie. We looked at cholesterol. We get cholesterol from animal byproducts, so we see it in a lot of meats and we see it in cheeses, a lot of things from animals. Hydration and dehydration. When I see hydration, the root word hydro jumps out at me. If we see this hydro in any word,
Water.
We know it has to do with either two things, water or hydrogen. And the reason why water is because water is also hydrogen, right? It's H2O. And so hydro, either hydrogen or water levels. D, meaning the opposite. So hydration is having lots of water. D is the opposite, so not having lots of water. Dysphagia. This was the word that I looked up because I was curious about it, because I thought I was right. Dysphagia. Do we know what dysphagia means? Any guesses? Anyone? Phagia is the Greek word for to swallow. And we see this in the digestive system, like the esophagus, right? Phagus, the phagia part of it is swallowing. So a lot of our words in the digestive system are going to have this phagia part of the word. And dys is just like the word dis, dis meaning opposite. So dysphagia is the inability to swallow. So if someone has like gone through surgery, or they have something where they literally can't take in food, they have dysphagia, the inability to swallow.
Oh, good to hear, Daddy.
All right. Edema is another word. Edema has to do with water levels. Yes. And if someone's water level, like they're not they're not excreting water, so they get really puffy and their water level is really high. And so that is edema, is that one. All right, we have nutrient and nutrition that we've talked about. Intake and output are important words, especially in the field of CNA, because when we're looking at nutrition, when we're looking at diets, as CNAs, you're constantly measuring the intake. So how much are patients taking in? How many milliliters of juice are they taking in? How many cups of soup are they taking in? What are all of the liquids? If you have someone on IV, how much of that liquid is going into them? And then you also measure the output, all their excrements, right? So you collect all of their pee and you actually then measure how much they're peeing to then see what is leaving the body. And we're constantly measuring that to see signs of things like edema, right? That are they letting go of what they're also taking in, their intake and their output. And you do measure that. We're constantly measuring it. And that is one of the main tasks of a CNA, is to make sure all of that's getting documented. That the intake was this many milliliters of juice, this many milliliters of water. We give them this many milliliters of Diet Coke. And then what was their output every time they use the bathroom, and then reminding the patients too, hey, remember, next time you go pee, we have to measure it, so make sure you pee into the cup before you dump it, right? And then make sure that we're measuring all of that output that they're getting. And then graduated cylinder is the tool that we use to measure liquids, right? So when you take that container for the patient to pee in the bathroom, it'll have all of those marks that will tell you how many milliliters is in that graduated cylinder. All right, any questions about these words? Any questions? I'm good? One thing to talk about is types of diets. When someone is in the hospital, you have to be very aware of the types of diets that people can be on. What are examples of types of diets patients can be prescribed by a doctor? Specifically looking at the nutrient and the nutritional levels, what type of diets can patients be on? We know.
Liquid diet?
Yep, they can be on a liquid diet because they can't have whole foods, right? So we can only give them sodas, soups, broth, juices, all those liquid diets. What else can they be on?
I think I heard from us is lactose intolerance diet.
Yes, lactose intolerance. So they can't have dairy. Anything that's naturally made with dairy will have lactose in it. Milk, cheese, ice cream, butter, all of those have lactose in it. All right, what else?
They'll have high calorie diets for the ones that need to gain some weight.
Yep, absolutely. The things that are like, you can eat anything you want and as much of it as you want. They're like, we need to get as many calories in you as possible.
Or low sugar diet.
Yes, low sugar diets, absolutely. So it's a lot of like sugar-free things, like the sugar-free Jello and those types of items, especially if someone is developing diabetes or is diabetic. Cancer. Really looking at those sugar or content cancer. Levels. Yep, or cancer. Yep. There's another diet that I can think of, especially with patients that are not with heart issues. There's a low sodium diet. And so that's a diet that will be prescribed to by doctors in the hospital, that they can only have options that are low in sodium. And so those are different. And so as a CNA, that's something to be aware of too, because each patient will have their own specific diet that's been prescribed to them, especially if they're staying in the hospital. And you have to make sure that they're only getting the things that they're required to get. And you're just kind of being aware of the fact of like, oh, yep, they're on a low sodium diet. These are all things that they can have that's been approved.
Or vegan or vegetarian.
Yeah. And then of course, personal choices too, right? And being like, yeah, are they vegetarian? Are they vegan? What are their personal choices? Also religious too. Can they eat pork? Can they not eat pork? And just getting all of those personal preferences from them to then provide the best customer service possible. Absolutely. So that kind of segues into my next idea. Since all this had to do with like health and nutrition and all of that, how much does culture play a part in that? Because we live in a world with 7.6 billion people. I mean, just try to imagine that, right? There's 7.6 billion people living around the world. We have what, over 6,000, it's like 6,500 plus languages, 6,000, right? More than 6,000 languages around the world. Think of all those different ways of living, all those different diets, all those different cultures. What is a healthy diet? And how much of it is scientific and how much of it is actual cultural preference? How much of what we're taught is political? Because something like the dairy industry gets so much money, right? And for them to make money, people have to buy their products. Well, how can we get people to buy their products? Well, by convincing them it's healthy and something they need. Well, how can we convince them it's something healthy they need? Well, let's put a whole bunch of advertisements in school like got milk, got milk, got milk. Right? How much is cultural? What are your thoughts, ladies? Or any examples? What do you think?
A lot of it is also like adapting to the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very aware of that in Alaska, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at like seafood intake, right? Alaskans in general have higher levels of seafood because we have access to such great salmon and halibut and different food sources.
Yeah, we live
right?
in a good location.
Absolutely. I think Alaskans in general probably eat more wild berries, right? Just because we have access to them too, right? Yeah. Especially like the blueberries and the crowberries and different things. So it is kind of environmental. In the Midwest, I grew up in like the Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota area, and beef was so popular because it was so cheap, right? There are so many farms with cows that beef was such a cheap product that we had steak and beef all the time because we had access to Omaha steaks living there because of the environment we were in. Absolutely.
Where I'm from, mid Canada, that's like the breadbasket. I mean,
Yep. Totally.
Yeah, it's a carb heaven.
Yep. Were you in Alberta, this area here? Or okay, yeah.
Alberta, yeah.
So right about in there. That's about Alberta. Right here.
Yep. That's right.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
I've done a
rice.
Yeah, rice, right? A very rice-based diet in the Philippines. Right in here.
Yeah.
So I've lived a lot of different places. I've taught in a lot of different countries before. And so things that I've seen, and since I work in education, I have a really unique perspective because a lot of these things are taught, right? Like we were taught the food pyramid. That was in a textbook, in a classroom. Teachers teach us these things and we absorb them as truth and facts, right? They're like, yes, this is the way the world works. Well, not really, not the entire world, right? And so as a teacher, I'm able to kind of infiltrate educational systems and see what are they teaching their people. And so I've collected food pyramids from around the world and I just find it super fascinating. This is a food pyramid from Spain that I came across. And something that jumped out to me that was super interesting is this right here. They have a daily recommended serving of olive oil. It is required. You have 2 tablespoons of olive oil every day. It is required. That is a healthy diet, is 2 cucharitas, tablespoons of olive oil on the Spanish food pyramid. Why
That's
would
so
that
interesting.
Right? Why would that be there? And there's a lot of reasons why it could be there. I mean, one, culturally, the Spanish use olive oil, right? The Mediterranean diet uses olive oil. They don't use the butters and things that we use. Also, if you look at it from a product, they're one of the #1 producers of olive oil. So it's this like symbol of patriotism, right? Of you use our products. Spain is known for its olive oil, so everyone uses the olive oil because it's healthy. Or is it because it's Spanish? right? And so there's that geopolitical part of it too, of like, interesting. Also, like wine and beer making it onto there, and like the Spanish are known for having drinks, right? You go out and you have your copa, your vino, and you have your tapas, and you're outside, and it's built into, yep, this is a healthy diet. This is a Latin American. This, I believe I got this one from a textbook in Costa Rica. What we see, I mean, similar, different. Both are Spanish-speaking countries. Yeah, nuts, yep, lots of nuts.
Beans and nuts?
Yep, so all of the legumes, right? The beans, nuts, and things like that. They have a whole category just for it. Notice their dairy is down here, right? Oh, no, I guess that's soy milk. That's soy milk and tofu.
No, they do grow a lot of soybeans.
Yep.
I
Cheese
feel
and
like
eggs.
I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but like in the culture in like Latin America or like South America is very different in the way that like what they view as like someone who is like well off or like healthy or like supported or provided for versus like Americans, like they, like if their wife or whatever is like has weighs more or like isn't as skinny, that's like viewed as them being taken care of and like kind of. So I wonder if that has something to do with how their pyramid is too, you know, of like their.
Yes, and that's something that like art historians have really looked at. Let me find a picture here. I remember the name of it. But art historians will take art and analyze them. I can't find what I'm looking for. But yeah, so like you were saying, it is kind of the perception of what is a healthy body has changed over time. And if we go back like 200-300 years ago and we study the art and images from 400 or 500 years ago, wealthy people were bigger, and that was kind of a positive thing. It was this sign of social class, right? That if you had the lifestyle that gave you the money to buy all of that food, to be rounder, plumper, that was a sign of success, and that was very attractive. And it was like, yes, that was a good person. They're overweight and it's good because they have the money to afford that type of a lifestyle. They have a job that allows them that lifestyle, right? They're not the peasant farmer that's outside and like doing all of this hard manual labor all day, every day, 6 days a week, right? That they have that really cushy state office job working for the government where they can get overweight. And we did see that like historical perspective did change, that it was based on the time frame in which we lived. There's a whole bunch of studies over perception of what is beauty and what is beautiful, and interesting. So yeah, so Latin American, so going back to our food, this was one that I found in a Chinese textbook, is their food pagoda, and some of the things that we can see. Just, you know, just those like cultural byproducts. So again, it goes back to that question of how much of it is actual science or how much of it is cultural perspective. And as medical providers and customer service, you're working with individuals from around the world, from different countries, different cultures, and we have to find that balance of, this is scientific knowledge of what health is, and these are cultural perspectives of what a healthy lifestyle is. Moving on, our next topic we really wanted to get at was mental health, that mental health aspect. And something a lot of psychologists talk about is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have we heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before? Have we heard about it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I have not.
You have not? Okay. So he was a psychologist back in the beginning of the 1900s, and he wrote a paper in 1940s, 1943, called A Theory of Human Motivation. And he came up with this theory of this idea of there's these different layers of needs, and they stack on top of each other. And if one of these gets taken away, everything else falls apart too. That as humans, we need this first, and then we move on to the next one. And when that's been accomplished, we move on to the next one. And we build our lives based, and our motivations, our desires are all based on the previous stages. And that we need these things here at the bottom. We all need air, water, food, and shelter. We need those basic physiological needs, right? We need a place to sleep. We need food in our belly. We need water. We need oxygen, or we literally will die without these basic things in a short period of time. Then we move on to this idea of safety, right? That not only do I have a place to sleep, but it's a safe place, right? It's safe, it's secure. I have this stable employment. I have these resources. I have access to the resources. I feel I have health. I can own things and have that ownership of this is mine. We then move up to this idea of friendship, intimacy, love, a sense of connection. And these are also things that we need and that we strive for. We need to be held. We need to be taken care of. We need to feel connected to the people around us. That is a need. Then focusing on that individual level, the idea of respect, self-esteem, status, all of those things, that those ideas of identity, of this is who I am and I feel good about myself, and working all the way up to that self-actualization of I'm the best person that I can be. These are my dreams, these are my hopes, and I have aspirations. All of these things down here are taken care of. I don't have to worry about any of them. So now I can focus all of my time and energy on what my dreams are and what things I want to accomplish with my life, not where my next meal is going to come from. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. And that's why his theory's been so supported since the 1940s, of these are all of the things that we need. And so when we're talking about people and their lives and what they need, it's so much more than just this bottom. And as healthcare providers, what are we focusing on? Are we just looking at their health from a physiological perspective of your body just needs this many calories, your body just needs 6 glasses of water, your body just needs 7 hours of sleep, you're fine. That's all you need. Or are we also invested in them as individuals and people and members of society, and getting them all of the things that they need, connecting them to social workers, connecting them to the community, getting them the services that they need, not just that physical health. And so that moves on to my next point. I wanted to talk about a doctor called Patch Adams. There was a movie made in the 90s. What was it? I thought I had the date here. It was 98, I think. 98, yeah, by Robin Williams, called Patch Adams. And it's based on a true story about a doctor that in the 70s came up with this innovative idea of what would happen if we took our patients and treated them like human beings and not just patients without names. Because before this, before the 1970s, doctors had a very distant relationship with patients, right? They would come in and be like, all right, here's your blood pressure, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's what you need to do, here's your prescription, and boom, and be done. Like they wouldn't even really ask them their name. They wouldn't create these connected interpersonal experiences. They were just literally treating the patient. And they had a mindset of you needed to do that. Because if you became too emotionally connected to your patients, you would end up getting hurt as a medical provider because patients die. We can't cure every disease, right? We definitely see this like in hospice care nowadays, right? Or in nursing homes, right? People are coming there and they will die. So we can't get emotionally attached because we will end up getting hurt as medical providers. And that was the mindset in the 70s of keeping medical professionals as distant from patients as humanly possible. And Patch Adams in the 70s was saying, no, we need to do the opposite, because there's only so much we can do at the physical level, but we can take care of all of those other needs as well. We can bring joy. We can bring happiness. We can put smiles on these people's faces. And how does that affect their recovery? How does that affect their physical health in these mental conditions? So here is a trailer of the video. This is a movie with Robin Williams playing the actor of Patch Adams, and I highly recommend watching this movie. It's a great movie. Here's a trailer.
It is our mission here to rigorously and ruthlessly train the humanity out of you and make you into something better. We're gonna make doctors out of you.
Well, I just believe there's more to being a doctor than memorizing facts about the ventricular arteries.
I don't care what you think. I care about my biology test.
We're not even going to see a patient until the 3rd year.
If you want to become a doctor, we have to learn to treat the patient as well as the disease. That's why we have to dive into people.
You have a brilliant mind, and like many brilliant people, you don't necessarily think the rules apply to you.
It was so much more convenient thinking of you as an idiot.
That little ice that just chipped off? If you want to be a clown, go join the circus.
For your own sake, I think you should just lay low for a while.
The hospital will cover all of your bills. Any other questions?
Patients are opening up to me, Corinne. They're sharing their dreams, their fantasies. They don't concentrate on the pain.
I'm warning you, stay out of this hospital.
What if a doctor becomes emotionally involved with the patient? What is wrong with that?
Patients don't need a friend, they need a doctor.
My name is Dr. Phil. I'll be your surgeon. Oh, there you are.
You are dismissed, sir, from this school.
They can't prevent me from graduating because of a personality clash, can they?
Universal Pictures presents.
You are not cut out to be a physician.
Our job is improving the quality of life, not just delaying death.
The true story of a man who broke every rule.
Why am I such a threat to you, sir?
Because what you want is for us to get down there on the same level as our patients.
And proved that laughter
Donner, party of 50. Donner, party over here.
truly is the best medicine.
Close, salute.
Robin Williams,
You treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you'll win, no matter what the outcome.
Patch Adams.
So great movie. I highly recommend it. One of the quotes I pulled out of that trailer was, our job is improving the quality of life, not just delaying death. And that is the mindset that we have today in healthcare, is this like holistic approach that we're not just focusing on their physical conditions, right? We're looking at their whole wellness and all these different aspects of their life, and how we can connect them to service providers, how we can provide that and create this overall better quality of life for individuals. So the wellness wheel is the last thing I wanted to leave you guys with, that this is kind of the model that we're using today of these different aspects of life that we all go through and that we all need to have a healthful, fulfilling life, and how all of us have these different levels of these different categories. And so there's that. I have a reflection question for you to look at this and to kind of reflect over your life. Which of these areas do you have a lot of? Which areas do you have the least amount of? How could you improve in those areas? Who can help you improve in those areas? And look at that. So that is one of our homework assignments, is a reflection question over the wellness wheel. And that is week 4, the requirements of human life, specifically looking at the term homeostasis.